The night air carried the weight of something unspoken, as if the land itself remembered sins better left buried. Sheriff Jonah Marks tightened the chain around his K9's collar, muttering under his breath, but the dog, Briggs, wouldn't stop straining toward the bar at the edge of the property. His low growls had sharpened into a piercing howl that didn't sound like warning or grief, but something in between. The sound raised the hairs on Jonah's neck. In a town where everyone thought they knew each other's secrets, Briggs had just unearthed one that would turn neighbor against neighbor and bring Jonah face to face with a truth he'd spent years trying to ignore. If you're drawn to dark, atmospheric stories with layered characters, consider following along for more. It helps keep these stories alive. The chain clinked against a metal stake as Jonah drove it into the ground. His hands trembled more than he wanted to admit. The summer night was thick, humid, crickets rasping in the tall grass, but Briggs's howl cut through it like broken glass. "Easy, boy," Jonah muttered. His voice was low, tight. "Ain't nothing in there but old hay and rust." But he didn't believe it. The barn stood 30 yards away, a hulking silhouette against the pale moonlight. Its roof sagged, shingles curling back like old scabs. The big doors were chained shut, same as they had been since Jonah inherited the land after his father passed. He hadn't set foot inside in years. Briggs lunged, the chain pulling taut. Jonah braced his boots in the dirt. "Damn it, Settle," he barked, yanking the dog back. But Briggs only threw his head up and howled again, a sound so raw it seemed to scrape the marrow out of Jonah's bones. A voice came from behind him. "You gonna keep fighting him all night, Sheriff?" Jonah stiffened, turning. Eli Crawford stood by the fence line, his deputy's badge catching a dull glint of moonlight. The young man had a way of showing up unannounced, quiet as smoke. "Thought I told you to stay in town," Jonah said. Eli shrugged. "You told me you were taking the night to yourself." But Briggs's howling carried damn near to Main Street. Folks are whispering. Figured I'd check. Jonah wiped sweat from his brow with the back of his hand. He didn't want Eli here. Not tonight, not near that barn. Dogs riled up. Maybe he caught scent of a fox, Jonah said. Eli's gaze drifted toward the barn. His jaw flexed. "Fox, huh? Funny how he's barking at the only place you never let nobody near." Jonah's throat tightened. He forced a laugh. Barn's falling apart. Nails sticking out, floorboards rotten. Don't need kids wandering in there breaking their necks. But Briggs yanked again, nearly toppling Jonah off balance. His claws dug trenches in the dirt. His growl deepened, vibrating like a storm in his chest. "Sheriff," Eli said slowly, "maybe we ought to look." No, Jonah's answer came too sharp, too fast. "Ain't nothing in there. I'll handle it." Eli studied him. There was something in the deputy's eyes Jonah didn't like. Suspicion, maybe even knowledge. "You'll handle it?" Eli said, his voice quieter now. "Or you're already handling it." Jonah felt the sting. He opened his mouth to snap back, but Briggs's howl rose again, long and keening, echoing across the fields like a siren. This time, lights flicked on at the neighboring farmhouse. A door creaked. Someone stepped out, silhouetted in the porch light. "Sheriff." The voice carried through the night. It was Mary Lou Hartley, gray-haired widow, robe cinched around her thin frame. "Everything all right?" Jonah swallowed hard. "Go on back inside, Miss Hartley. Dog just spooked by something." But Briggs wasn't letting it go. His whole body strained toward the barn, muscles taut, eyes fixed on the chain doors, as though he could see straight through them. Mary Lou lingered a moment, worry etched in her posture, then retreated inside. Eli stepped closer, lowering his voice. "You can keep telling folks it's nothing, but sooner or later, Sheriff, we're going to have to open them doors." Jonah turned on him, voice rough. "You think I don't know what folks will say if we do? Think I don't know how fast this town will eat me alive?" Eli didn't flinch. "Depends on what's really inside." For a long moment, only the sound of Briggs's frantic breathing filled the air. Jonah's heart pounded in his chest. He hated the barn, hated how it loomed in his dreams like a wound that wouldn't heal. And Briggs knew. Damn dog knew. Jonah yanked the chain free of the stake and hauled the dog toward the truck. Briggs resisted every step, claws scraping against the dirt. Jonah's knuckles whitened around the collar. "You let him keep crying like that," Eli said, "and half the count will be out here by morning." Jonah stopped cold. He could already see it. Neighbors gathered, whispers spreading, phones dialing the local paper. And when those doors came open, everything he'd tried to bury would spill out. He turned slowly toward the barn, its shadow pooling thick across the ground. Briggs whined, ears pinned, body trembling with urgency. Jonah's mouth went dry. He could light at Eli. He could drag Briggs back into the house, lock the doors, drown the howls with whiskey. But the barn waited, heavy with silence, like it was holding its breath. Finally, Jonah spoke. His voice sounded far away. "Fine. Get the lantern." The rusty padlock groaned as Jonah's bolt cutters bit through it. The chain clattered to the ground, loud in the night. Briggs surged forward, nails clicking on the warped wooden steps. Nose pressed a crack between the doors. Jonah hesitated, the weight of the lantern burning hot in his grip. "You sure you want me here for this?" Eli asked. "No." Jonah muttered. His hands shook as he fit them around the handles. "But I reckon I don't get a choice." He heaved the doors open. The smell hit first, sour, rancid, clinging. Briggs barked, sharp and furious. The lantern light spilled over mounds of hay, rotted tools, beams furred with cobwebs. And in the far corner, half buried in straw, was something that made Jonah's stomach turn to ice. A shape, pale, still. Eli swore under his breath. Christ Almighty! Jonah froze. His lungs refused air. The lantern rattled in his grip. Briggs whined now, low and mournful, stepping toward the shape. Eli's voice shook. "That's a body, Sheriff." Jonah's throat worked, but no sound came. His eyes burned. He couldn't look away. It wasn't just a body. It was someone he knew. And it was someone the town had been asking about for a long, long time. The lantern shook in Jonah's grip, casting shadows that twisted across the barn walls. Dust hung thick in the air, stirred by Briggs's restless pacing. The K9 whined low, circling the straw-covered shape, tail rigid. Jonah's legs felt like stone. Every muscle wanted to move, but the weight of memory pinned him in place. "Sheriff." Eli's voice cracked. He stepped closer, eyes fixed on the body. "We need to call this in." Jonah swallowed hard. "Not yet. Not yet." Eli's gaze snapped toward him, disbelief etched on his face. "That's a goddamn corpse in your barn, Jonah." The lantern light brushed over pale skin, the curve of a shoulder, strands of matted hair darkened by rot. Time had stolen away features, but Jonah didn't need a clear face. He knew, his chest constricted, as though the earth itself pressed down. Eli's voice sharpened. "Sheriff, who is it?" Jonah's lips trembled, but no words came. He lowered the lantern, setting it on a cracked beam. His hands raked back through his hair, pulling hard at the roots as though pain might wake him from this. "You knew," Eli said softly. Not a question. A verdict. Jonah turned on him, eyes raw. "Don't say it." Eli's jaw tightened. All those years the town whispered about Sarah Whitmore vanishing after the summer fair. Folks wondered if she ran off. Others thought maybe she ended up face down in the river. And you never looked too damn hard, did you? Jonah flinched at the name. Sarah. Sweet, reckless Sarah with laughter sharp enough to cut through the noise of any barroom. Sarah who disappeared one humid night when the cicadas screamed so loud they drowned out her cries. If she cried at all. Eli's eyes narrowed. Tell me she didn't die here. Jonah's throat worked, but his voice came out hoarse, hollow. I told her to leave town. Told her not to stir trouble with my father. She wouldn't listen. The deputy blinked, stunned. Your father? Jonah's eyes burned. He looked at the body in the straw, bile rising in his throat. It was him, Eli. It was always him. The barn creaked, timbers shifting like they were listening. Eli stepped back, his hand brushing instinctively near the holster at his hip. So what, he killed her? And you just, what, covered it up? I buried her here. Jonah's voice broke, a jagged whisper. I was 23. I didn't know what else to do. He said if I told a soul, he'd put me in the ground right beside her. And he meant it. Eli stared, breath shallow. Your old man's been dead 8 years. Jonah's shoulders sagged. Yeah, but fear outlives a man who plants it. Briggs whined again, pawing gently at the straw near Sarah's body, his ears pinned tight against his skull. Eli dragged a hand down his face. Jesus, Jonah, you've been sheriff all this time, holding the secret? Jonah's jaw clenched. Don't act like you don't know what it's like. Eli, this town, this place, it'll twist you, make you do things you swore you'd never do. That's not the same as burying a woman in your damn barn. Eli shot back. Their voices echoed off the rafters. Dust drifted to the lantern light, shimmering like ash. Jonah stepped closer, lowering his voice. You think I wanted this? You think I ain't carried her ghost every day since? Every time I looked her mama in the eye? Every time I walked down Main Street and saw folks whispering about her? Eli's face was a storm of conflict. Then why not tell? Why not dig her up years ago and set it right? Jonah's answer came raw, stripped, because then I'd have to admit what I did, that I wasn't man enough to stop him, that I wasn't man enough to save her. The barn seemed to close in on them, thick with silence. Only Briggs moved, pacing slow circles, nose pressed the straw, as if keeping vigil. Finally, Eli broke it. We can't hide this. Not anymore. Jonah's eyes flicked to him, sharp, desperate. Eli, if this comes out, the town won't just bury my father's name. They'll bury mine too. Everything I built, everything I swore to protect, it'll turn to ash. You already built it on ash, Eli muttered, but his voice wavered. Jonah stepped closer, gripping Eli's arm. You're my deputy. You swore loyalty. If you ever meant it, you'll help me handle this the right way. Eli yanked free. The right way? He gestured at the straw, the pale curve of Sarah's arm. The right way would have been 20 years ago. The lantern guttered, shadows lurching across the corpse. The air grew heavier, suffocating. Jonah's chest heaved. Help me, Eli. Please. Eli stared at him, torn between duty and something deeper, resentment, maybe even betrayal. Then Briggs barked, loud and sudden, startling them both. His hackles rose, eyes locked on the barn's rafters. Jonah froze. What is it, boy? A sound followed, slow, deliberate creaks overhead, like footsteps on the loft. Eli's hand snapped to his gun. He tilted the lantern upward. Shadows tangling the beams, dust drifting down. Who's there? Eli barked. No answer. Jonah's heart slammed against his ribs. Ain't nobody been up there for years. The creaking came again, heavier this time. Briggs snarled, teeth flashing. Eli raised his weapon. Show yourself. Silence. Then, faintly, a low laugh drifted from the loft. Cold, mocking. Jonah's blood iced. That's impossible, he whispered. The laugh faded, leaving only the hollow groan of the barn. Eli's eyes darted to Jonah. What the hell was that? Jonah shook his head, trembling. He's dead. My father's dead. I put him in the ground myself. But the way his voice cracked betrayed him. Eli's face hardened. You better not be keeping more secrets from me, Sheriff. Because if there's something else in this barn... A thud cut him off. Heavy. Final. Something dropped from the loft into the shadows beyond the lantern's reach. Briggs lunged, barking furiously. Eli swung his gun toward the dark. Stay back, he hissed. The lantern flickered, light straining to hold back the shadows. Jonah's hands shook uncontrollably. His father's voice echoed in his skull, low, cruel, commanding. You'll never be free of me, boy. For a moment, Jonah thought he saw a shape in the dark. Broad shoulders, a crooked hat, eyes glinting with hate. But when the lantern steadied, the corner was empty, except for something new lying on the floorboards. Eli moved closer, gun raised. The object gleamed dull in the lantern light, a silver flask, its surface dented, initials etched deep. Jonah's stomach dropped. He knew those initials. Jam, Eli read aloud. He looked up, suspicion burning in his eyes. That's yours, Sheriff. Jonah staggered back. No, that ain't. His words faltered. He remembered the flask. Yes, his father's gift. but he hadn't seen it in years. Eli held it up. The lanterns glowed, dancing off the metal. Looks like someone's been in here more recent than you claimed. Jonah's pulse thundered in his ears. They lie, I swear. But Eli wasn't listening. His eyes were sharp, calculating, measuring Jonah like a suspect instead of friend. You've been lying from the start, Eli said, his voice low, dangerous. Maybe it wasn't just your father. Maybe you had a hand in it too. Jonah's chest heaved. You think I killed her? I think, Eli said slowly. I don't know what to think anymore. The distance between them stretched taut, fragile as glass. Briggs stood between them, hackles raised, ears flicking between master and deputy. The air felt ready to shatter. Then, from outside, came the wail of sirens. Jonah's heart stopped. Eli's eyes flicked toward the sound. Looks like Miss Hartley didn't buy your story after all. Blue and red lights flashed through the barn slats, growing brighter. Tires crunched gravel. Car doors slammed. Voices carried in the night. Jonah felt the ground tilt beneath him. The town was here. The secret was out. And Sarah Whitmore's ghost would finally have her day. The sirens cut through the humid night, a rising wail that clawed at Jonah's nerves. Blue and red light bled to the barn's cracks, painting the rotting wood in shifting colors. Briggs barked furiously, chain rattling against the boards, his body taut with alarm. Jonah's chest heaved. He felt cornered like a hunted animal. They can't see this, he whispered. His voice sounded like it came from somewhere far away. Not like this. Eli's gun was still raised, eyes hard, suspicion carving deep lines into his young face. Then maybe you should have thought of that 20 years ago, Sheriff. The barn doors creaked. A flashlight beam sliced into the darkness. Sheriff Marks. A voice Jonah knew. Deputy Reese Miller, overeager, green as spring wheat. We heard the calls. Folks say they're screaming. A dog gone wild. Reese stepped inside. Behind him came others, neighbors, deputies, townsfolk pulled by the howl of gossip and sirens. Faces Jonah recognized from church pews, grocery aisles, the post office. Eyes wide, curious, hungry. And then their gazes found the straw-covered shape in the corner. The murmur started low, a ripple of disbelief. My God, someone whispered. Reese froze, flashlight trembling. Sheriff, is that... Jonah's world shrank to the sound of his own breathing. He wanted to speak, to control the story, but the words stuck like gravel in his throat. Eli holstered his gun slowly, stepping forward. Body's been here a long while, he said, voice steady. Looks like Sarah Whitmore. Gasps. The name carried weight. A ghost dragged into the open at last. Sarah, the girl who vanished in whispers, whose smile had haunted half the men in town. Sarah, who never came home. Mary Lou Hartley pushed through the crowd, hand to her mouth. Her voice trembled. All these years. The barn grew hot, suffocating with bodies and suspicion. Dozens of eyes turned toward Jonah, their sheriff. The man sworn to protect them. Reese swallowed hard. Sheriff? You got an explanation? Jonah's knees felt weak. He braced a hand on the stall door, splinters digging his palm. He could feel Eli stare like a blade at his back. I didn't kill her, Jonah rasped. It was my father. The barn went still, silence, except for the rasp of Briggs's breathing. My father did this, Jonah said louder, eyes scanning the crowd. He hurt her, and when it was done, he made me bury her here. I was young. His voice cracked. I was scared. Murmurs swelled, disbelief and horror blending like storm clouds. Mary Lou's eyes filled with tears. You knew. All these years you knew. Jonah reached for her, desperate. I wanted to tell. God help me, I wanted to. But he wasn't a man you could cross. And when he died, I thought maybe letting her rest was mercy. Eli stepped forward. Or maybe you thought keeping it buried was easier than facing the truth. Jonah spun on him, raw anger breaking through the fear. You think I don't pay for it every damn day? You think I don't see her in every dream, hear her in every Howl Briggs lets loose? The crowd shifted, restless. Reese's hand hovered near his radio. Sheriff, we need to call state investigators. This is way bigger than us. Briggs suddenly barked, sharp and frantic, eyes locked on the loft above. The sound rippled panic through the barn. "What now?" someone muttered. Eli's gaze snapped upward. "There's something up there. We heard it earlier." The flashlight beam swept the rafters. Dust swirled. Cobwebs glistened. For a heartbeat, Jonah thought he saw him. His father, broad shoulders bent, crooked grin sneering down. His chest squeezed so tight he couldn't breathe. "Loft's empty," Reese called. "Just old boards." But then a crash split the night. Something heavy toppled from the rafters, slamming into the straw. An old trunk, lid springing open. Out spilled clothing, brittle with age, and bones small enough to still carry the shape of youth. Screams erupted. The barn lurched with chaos. People stumbling back, gasping, cursing. Jonah staggered forward, lantern swinging wild. Inside the trunk lay scraps of fabric. A blue dress he remembered from a different summer. Bones that didn't belong to Sarah. Bones that were smaller. Eli's face drained of color. "Jesus Christ, there's more." The barn roared with voices. "How many? God Almighty!" All this time, Jonah's stomach turned. He could hardly hear over the pounding in his ears. His father's voice echoed, dark and cold. "You'll never be rid of me, boy. My sins are yours now." Mary Lou's voice cut through the din, trembling but sharp. "Sheriff Marks, what kind of house did you grow up in?" Jonah couldn't answer. His mouth worked, but nothing came. He felt naked beneath the weight of their stares. Reese stepped forward, pale as chalk. "Sheriff, I'm sorry, but I think you gotta come with us." The words sliced him open. His own deputy. His own town. Eli met Jonah's gaze. Something complicated burning in his eyes. Anger, pity, betrayal. He didn't speak, but he didn't stop it either. Briggs whined low, pressed against Jonah's leg, as if trying to anchor him. Jonah dropped a trembling hand to the dog's head, tears burning his eyes. "Don't do this," Jonah whispered. "I kept the peace here for 20 years. I gave everything I had to this town. And you built on a grave," Eli said. The barn doors yawned open wider as deputies moved closer, cautious, hands ready. The crowd parted, whispers slicing Jonah like knives. Murderer, coward, just like his daddy. Jonah's knees buckled. He sank against the stall, head bowed. "I tried to chain him outside," he murmured, voice breaking. "Thought maybe Briggs wouldn't drag me back here. But the dog knew. He always knew." No one spoke. Even the barn seemed to listen. Finally, Jonah lifted his head, eyes wet, voice raw. "I ain't a skin for forgiveness. I don't deserve it. But Sarah does. And whoever those other bones belong to, they do too. So, dig this whole place up. Burn it if you have to. Just don't let him win, not even now." Eli's throat worked. For the first time, his voice softened. "We'll see they get their piece. Even if it means taking yours." Jonah nodded, shoulders collapsing. He held out his wrists. Cold metal closed around them a moment later. Briggs howled, long and mournful, the sound carrying out into night like a funeral song. The crowd watched as their sheriff was led past them, not one hand raised in protest. The sirens wailed again, cutting into the darkness, guiding the convoy toward town. Behind them, the barn loomed, silent and swollen with secrets. The lantern's flame guttered out, plunging Sarah Whitmore's resting place into shadow once more. And for the first time in decades, the soil would be turned and the truth, rotted, broken, but undeniable, would finally come to light. Epilogue. Weeks later, Main Street buzzed with stories. Investigators swarmed the Marks farm, exhuming horrors buried in silence. Families wept. Old rumors hardened into truths. Jonah sat alone in a county cell, head bowed, listening to Briggs's faint howls echo from the kennels outside. He closed his eyes. For the first time in years, he didn't dream of Sarah screaming or his father's shadow. He only heard the dog, loyal even now, a sound not of judgment but of mourning. And somehow, that hurt worst of all.